Hey everyone, Sam here. Thanks for joining me. I hope you're having a beautiful day wherever you are in the world. In this video I'm going to show you how to paint some Australian trees outdoors on plein air. This comes from a recent trip to Australia that I took. I took my paints with me and I got a chance to do some outdoor painting whilst I was there. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And without further ado, we'll just get straight into the video and I hope you enjoy it. So I'm on the central coast in New South Wales, Australia, by the edge of Lake Macquarie, and I'm going to do some plein air painting. Haven't been out plein air painting in a while, so just got a quick moment to get out for a couple of hours and get some painting done. So let's see what we're going to paint. And I'm going to paint this scene over here, mainly the gum tree and the paper bark, so just a simple scene. I'm working on a 8x10, not an 8x10, sorry, a 6x8 panel, and this Alla Prima Peshar box. These are the colours I'm using: titanium white, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, cadmium yellow, cadmium red, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue and phthalo green. So let's get going. Okay, so I'm just outlining this paper bark here, and we've got a gum tree there. And I've tried to make it so that these two trees are kind of around this part of the composition, so we don't want these in the middle, so they're more kind of left of centre, so that's just going to make the composition more interesting. Right then, whenever I start painting, I paint the dark values and shadows first, and the darkest values in the tree over there is in the tree canopy itself. It's backlit by the sun, but also the main stem. So I'm using a mix of ultramarine blue and some yellow ochre, so it's going to create a nice dark mix, and even some of this burnt sienna could probably mix in, that'll be fine. So we'll start by painting some of the shadows in this tree canopy here. Now, as I paint this, as I'm using oil paint, and the medium I'm using to thin the paint is Liquid Original, and that speeds up the drying time as well. So hopefully it's reasonably warm today. It should be touch dry, well, it'll be touch dry within 24 hours, but it should have already started to set a little bit within an hour or so. So it means I'll be able to hopefully layer some darker tones over the top. For the moment, I just want the general outline. And now I'm going to mark in the main stem of this paper bark. This is a mix of yellow ochre, burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, and a little titanium white. So this is mostly in shadow, but then I'm also going to add a little bit of highlight to it, which should hopefully bring it to life. Just put it in the outline here. I'll sort of start mixing some more colours into it as I work through. There's another main branch here. I'm just going to put some darker tones in there too. So I've just added in a bit more ultramarine blue here, just to paint some of these cracks and furrows within this paper bark. So I'm using oil paints, as I said. The brand of paint I'm using is Blue Ridge Oils, and if you want to get some Blue Ridge Oils, I'll put a link in the description box below. I'm going to use a different colour mix for the gum tree, so I'm going to use some yellow ochre, some alizarin crimson and some ultramarine blue. It's quite a bit, also titanium white, so that's quite saturated there, so I'm going to knock that back with some more yellow ochre. So we've got a bit of a violet here going on, so the yellow ochre's yellow opposite to violet. It's going to knock it back a bit. Ultramarine blue, so we can use that for the base of the gum tree. Okay. So the base of this gum tree is quite dark, and then the trunk gets much lighter in value. So what I'll do is I'll add a bit more titanium white into this mix, perhaps a bit more ultramarine blue. There we go, that's a nice gum tree colour. So I'm just painting some of these tree shadows here that are in the grass. This is ultramarine blue, yellow ochre. There's also a little bit of burnt sienna as well. I'm actually just using the same mix pretty much with the shadows I use for the trees. And now I'm just going to paint the shadow on this boat here. Actually, that could do with being a bit lighter in value, so I'm just adding some more titanium white. And this is ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, a dash of alizarin crimson and titanium white. Just going to go back to this paper bark and just add some of the texture that's in the trunk itself. And I'm actually pretty much using this mix here, but just adding this to the paper bark. And there's definitely some warmer tones in this bark as well, so I'm going to paint some of that in the trunk as well. Okay, I'm painting some more of these earthy tones that are in the water. The water's reflecting the she oak trees that are in the background, and it's creating a kind of olive greenish colour in the water. So I've used yellow ochre, ultramarine blue, titanium white and some burnt sienna, and I find this is a brilliant colour combination for creating some of those nice earthy greens that you'd find in water, especially water where you can see the bed of the river or the water underneath. So that's a real good go-to colour combination in my opinion. So I'm just painting these in, and then there's lots of areas of the water that's reflecting the sky as well, so I'll be painting that in just a moment as well. I'm using a number 5 flat brush, and in general when I'm plein air painting I try and use the biggest brushes that I can get away with, just for that more kind of painterly effect. And I'm using Rosemary & Co brushes, been using them for years, and if you want to get some Rosemary & Co brushes, again there's a link in the description box below. Definitely recommend them. Now the next thing I'm going to do is start marking in some of the backlit areas of the tree canopy, and I want to mix a nice kind of olive green that's a little bit more saturated than these shadow areas, so I've got to be careful it's not overly saturated, but I do want a little bit of richness within the green. So I'm starting off with some yellow ochre, got some cadmium yellow there. Yellow ochre is just going to make it look more earthy and natural. Then mix in some ultramarine blue. This is going to be the base of my green here. Oh, it's probably a bit too much ultramarine blue. That's alright. So we can start off with that. I can even lighten the value with some titanium white. And then in general, I usually just add a colour that contains red. I'm using cadmium red here, but just to help earth the green a little bit more, just helps to make it look a bit more natural. Okay, right, let's see how we got on with this colour. Yeah, that looks alright. what I really like about the tree canopy here is just how you just got the edges of these bunches of leaves that are just being illuminated in the full sun. I just really love these Australian trees, especially these paperbarks and the gum trees, of course. Now some of the leaves from this gum tree are hanging down, and they're even lighter in value than the paperbark behind it. Also, I think the leaves are being illuminated even more. Perhaps they're a bit thinner, perhaps the leaves are a little bit thinner than the paperbark. So I'm just going to have some of those hanging down. And I'm just mixing the colour for the grass, so I've just mixed in a dash of phthalo green into this existing green mix. Yeah, that should do it. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I'll just add a bit more phthalo green in there. Whoops, too much. One thing with phthalo green, you've got to be real careful with it because it's got a very high tinting strength, so if you use too much, it quite often overpowers your mixture. I normally knock it back a little bit with some cadmium red as well. See what that looks like. I think probably I might need to make these shadows here a little bit more green. At the moment they're probably a little bit too much burnt sienna in it, but it's not a problem, man. Absolute easy fix. So I'll be able to sort that out in a minute. Right, and I'm going to restate some of these shadows here, and this time I've added in a little bit of cadmium yellow, so that makes it a bit more green, which is what I think these shadows need. Man, I'll tell you what, the birds here are well noisy. That's awesome. I love the birds in Australia. Especially the kookaburras, they make a mad sound. So I think what this painting needs now is some blue in the water. Trying to paint the reflections in the water, so let's start off with some titanium white and some ultramarine blue. I might just do it actually, I might add a dash of phthalo green. Just get a bit of liquid in there. Alright, let's see what that looks like. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And I can let some of this other mix go into it as well. I'll just tame the blue a little bit. So now I've just marked in the areas of the water that's reflecting the sky. I think I might as well paint the sky itself. So it's the same colours in the water. I'm actually adding just a little bit more titanium white in the mix, just to make the valley a bit lighter. And then I'll also be able to paint some sky holes in the trees. So this is gaps in the tree canopy where the sky's coming through. That's going to add to the realism. But I'm going to be going back over the tree canopy in a minute. So there's some of these gaps here where I can paint the sky. Alrighty, I'm going to paint the suggestion of these she oaks that are in the background. I'm really not going to go for too much detail. They're kind of a very pale olive green, but reasonably dark in value. I think I want it lighter in value than these, but I'm going to come back to this this part of the tree in a moment. And I'll also paint the grass that's in the distance as well. Right, so now I'm going to add some more of these highlights on the tree here. So I've just marked in these highlights, and now I'm going to go over this and add another layer, so restating these dark valleys. And this initial layer, because of the liquid I mixed in, has already started to dry a little bit, so you'll see that the value is coming out much darker, which is good. So that's going to bring the tree forward, because we'll find our darkest darks and our lightest lights in the foreground. Yeah, as landforms recede, darks are not as dark and lights are not as light. These darker values here are going to bring this tree forward, and then it won't get lost so much with these she oaks that are in the background. So I'm also now using some really thick paint. Just feathering the ends of some of these bunches of leaves as well. So just adding some more highlights to these gum leaves here. They're almost kind of a sort of an acidic reddish green. So I want the green here to be reasonably saturated. I'm going to tidy up the stem of this gum tree. Just also adding in some lighter values. So still the same mix I used early on, so ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, a lot of titanium white, and a dash of alizarin crimson. The alizarin crimson is going to give it a nice violet tint. Just painting some of this reflected light in the main tree trunk and the stems. And just adding a little bit of warmth into this paper bark, just with some straight burnt sienna. That's going to mix into the existing paint I've already put on there already. So I'm just mixing up some highlights here, which I'm going to paint on the branches of the paper bark. And it's just titanium white with a dash of yellow ochre. So let's see how we do. Just want a real few little highlights. paint some highlights here on the boat itself. So this painting is nearly finished now, and I'm just tidying up all these areas. So just tidying up the grass. And then I'll finish up the whole thing by just adding a few highlights. And I'm just adding a few final highlights here. Right, well, I think that's pretty much finished. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to learn more about painting landscapes, then you've got to check out my Patreon channel. Each month I upload a full tutorial plus lesson notes and reference photos, and I'm also now starting to post weekly content, so this will be a mixture of stuff. Could be time-lapse videos, painting demonstration videos, and generally content to get you inspired. I absolutely love landscape painting. It's my absolute passion, and I also love sharing my knowledge and teaching people like you, even if you're a complete beginner, but just to help you with your painting skills and to get inspired by my painting style. So if that sounds good to you, then I'll put the link in the description box below. And one last thing, if you subscribe to my email list, I'm giving away a free ebook on Introduction to Oil Painting. So I hope you enjoyed this video and it inspires you to paint some landscapes, or maybe even go outside painting. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.